Yeah, that was fun. I mean, I think you guys got the best of us, but we got to run that back soon.
Yeah. You guys won one game too. It was pretty even.
Yeah, true. Okay. Um, yeah, that was fun. All right, but let me mute that. All right. Okay, it's live now.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just gonna start the intro, and then we'll go
Actually, I don't need this
into.
stuff.
Huh?
No, look at this the pod stuff, but you're gonna have it up
Okay.
on you.
So I'm gonna start with the intro, and then we'll start with the draft takeaways real quick. The trade, the DeJounte Murray trade. I wanted to mention that Mikal Bridges trade. There's some other notable trades too that we can get into, or even like coaching moves. You guys want to get into that, and then we start with free agency afterwards. So that's pretty much the plan. Okay, you guys ready for me to start?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 90 of the Finale Podcast. Today I'm joined by Ashford to my right.
Mhm.
We got Connor in here. We got Tyler, and we got Yosef. We're just going to talk about the NBA offseason today and also live reactions to free agency moves that will be starting at 6 Eastern today. So, guys, it's been a while since we've done a pod in general. So, how have you been?
Good. Yeah, just chilling.
Chilling.
Yeah, been
Great.
good.
Let's get it.
Good, Yosef? I didn't hear you respond. Oh,
Timberwolves to free agency.
did you guys catch that?
You folks for
No, it cut off.
Okay. But you're good, though?
Yeah, we're good.
Good.
okay.
All right. Connor, congrats by the way. That's how you got the Wizards job for Valley, right?
Oh, snap.
Yeah, it's not with Bally's. It's
Congrats.
a different company, but yeah, I'm with the Wizards now. So did a little draft coverage. When was that on Wednesday? Yeah, busy time off season. It's fun though. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Congrats.
for
Whoa,
sure.
that's big.
Yeah. But yeah, let's just get into things. So NBA draft was last week, or this past week, I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I just want to ask you guys who are your winners and losers for the draft when looking at all the teams and their selections, starting with Ashford.
Okay. I have three. Well, okay, they're a little bit biased though. I do want to say the Spurs. Getting Stephon Castle was a good pick, and also too, as much as I saw like the Rob Dillingham trade, I think them getting two picks back for Rob Dillingham is still good. They have a good set of guards, and plus they could do something in the free agency, so I think that's just a win. Minnesota, us getting Rob Dillingham, I was not expecting that at all, and just to have him on our team be developed under Mike Conley as the potential guard in the future is just, I'm looking forward to it. And this is another fan one. Um, Bulls, we're going through it right now. But I will say at 11, given Matas Buzelis, I think that was a steal. I do think he would have been top five if he didn't shoot bad this past season in the G League. But we need some hope, and that prospect, although Bulls don't really have a good job developing, I do think he could come in and get some good minutes for us while we're going through this. Are we rebuilding? Are we not? Kind of thing. So I'll say those three. Also, shout out to Lakers, obviously for Bronny, but I like Dalton Connect for them. At
Huge.
17, yeah, I think like although he may be a little bit older, but I think they need that like a more seasoned guard. Um, I saw on Twitter they're calling like his nicknames like Connect Four, and I was like, okay, that's kind of hard, but those would be my winners. I would say.
All right, Connor.
Yeah, I mean, the Lakers are one of the winners for me. Obviously, Connect. He's a great player. His ceiling probably isn't. Maybe he's not as high as some of these other guys, but they're not in the business of waiting 4 years for a guy to become good. I think he's a guy that just can step in and play right away from day one. I also like what the Spurs did with Stephon Castle. I think he's like the type of guard that they need badly. They need perimeter defense and size. It seemed like last year everybody on the perimeter was just getting blown by, and then Wemby had to kind of clean up the mess. You can't really win in the NBA if you just have one good defender and it's a rim defender. So I like what they're doing. They're building it up slowly there. But those would be my two winners. A little biased with this one, but I think the Wizards also had a pretty good draft. They drafted three guys in the first round, and I think they're going to be really bad next year, but they just need young guys to grow together there. And I think the three selections that they made are all good ones for them.
Yeah, I agree. Tyler.
Yeah, and I mean I don't want to repeat it too much, but Stephon Castle is my favorite player in the draft, so definitely love that pick for the Spurs. I think him and Wemby are going to be really something special for the next few years. And Portland getting Donovan Clingan at 7. I know there was talk of him possibly going first overall. Definitely top 5 conversations. Teams were talking about trading up for him, so it's kind of the perfect situation for Portland, able to get him and stay put there. So I like that fit for them.
Yeah.
Cool. I have two major winners for this draft. I'm going to start off. I think the winners of this draft are the Timberwolves. And I don't want to overblow the situation, but the reason why it was a win for them is because since it was the only avenue they could use to improve their team, they put an emphasis on it more than maybe other contending teams or other teams that are a little bit closer than, the lottery teams. So with that being said, going in trading 2031 first round pick, it is 6 years away, but when you look into the future, you have at least Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards locked up during that season. So you would assume that, even if things go even just about average, you probably won't get the eighth pick. It will probably be somewhere in the teens, if at worst. So trading a pick that far out into the future, as well as, having one of the best players in the league by then in his prime, you would assume that it's not going to be an eighth pick anyway. So ultimately, the Wolves trading that pick, that far out into the distance at that level that you imagine your team being at, I think that's a total win. It's like trading. I don't think it will be an eighth overall pick personally. So great value in that sense. And then when we talk about the swap that they gave up, the Spurs have Wembanyama, probably the one or two second best players between him and Ant, or who will be that good that in 2031, 2030 era. So giving that up is not a big deal to me because the Spurs could be just as good or maybe better than the Wolves that season. So a big win for the Timberwolves, giving up what seems to be a crucial first round pick, but rather having that. And I think it's a win-win because the Spurs ultimately, I think they don't want to surround. They want to surround Wemby with enough young talent, but also they're looking into the future, looking to build up a treasure trove of picks if they would like to make a trade, if the right piece comes available, being able to put their pieces forward to make that trade. So I think it's a win for both parties. But Minnesota being the larger takeaway from that one. A second team that I really liked, or a third team that I really liked, was the 76ers drafting Jared McCain. I think that was a very slept on pick. He went in the teens, and I think that was a great pickup for them. Good backcourt piece to play alongside Maxi. Someone who I think their skill set will translate very well into the NBA, and his ability to make plays without being turnover prone, I think is huge. Who knows what the future lies for the 76ers as Joel Embiid gets a little bit older, but shoring up that backcourt, I think is a huge move for them. Something very sneaky for like an older, roster, competing roster, but eyes looking forward and moving it ahead. I think it's a good pick for Philadelphia. Looking forward to see how his career pans out.
For me, I'll do one winner and then I'll start with the losers. I'll say to switch it up. I like Minnesota's. Obviously, I like Minnesota's ability to get who I think are two rotational players in the first round that can contribute right away next season, and Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon Jr. I think the Jazz also did well, getting I believe 2 first-round picks and then an early second-round pick in Kyle Filipowski. I like Cody Williams, and then I think Collier from USC, he can develop to be a really nice guard tandem alongside Keontae George. I think the Jazz are slowly building something special. And then when you look at the Lauri Markkanen, potentially rumors of him moving, I mean, they can just stack up more on these assets that they already have. So I like the Jazz and what they're doing going forward. And then a loser, uh, I want to say the Bucks. I think that's a popular take with the Bucks because they drafted like some guy that just didn't really do that well. He's a young player that was promising going into the professional league. I forgot which league he went into, but let me see. Yeah, AJ Johnson. He played in Australia. Yeah, I just think that's kind of a risky pick considering where they're at. They had the opportunity to get a nice player at number 23 overall to really help them going forward. I think there were some better players on the board that can help them. When you look at their recent drafts, getting like Marjan Beauchamp, like they haven't drafted somebody that's really been like a contributing player since like Dante DiVincenzo. So I think they have a missed opportunity with that selection. So I'll pick the Bucks as my loser. Ashford loser.
I was gonna piggyback on the Bucks too. Maybe another team also. I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, but the Hornets. To I don't know how to.
Okay.
Yeah. How do you pronounce it?
Yeah, this guy.
Yeah, yeah,
6th overall pick.
yeah.
Salon or Saloon.
Salon, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really. I don't know what the Hornets are trying to do as far as compete now, or I don't know. I was watching some of the highlights. I wasn't moved too much. This could be just more from a personal bias perspective. Also, I mean, not a big loser. But or I mean, maybe you could have thoughts on this too, like Zach Edey at 9. I know we talked about it earlier with the Grizzlies. I don't know. I'm not really too moved by Zach Edey personally.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted them to go out there for to get a center, whether via trade. But I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of the tandem, but who knows? We'll see. But I would for sure say the Bucks as my official one.
Real quick, I mean, I think for your Zach Edey comment, I like Zach Edey. I think he can contribute right away as that big man presence that they've been missing alongside Jaren Jackson. He already has a nice offensive skill set, and I can see him, getting more of offensive skill set, being able to shoot threes slowly into his career. So I think in that sense, he's like going to be able to help them a little bit more than Steven Adams was able to. Like there's limitations to Steven Adams' game. You saw it in the playoffs, what Cat was able to do to him a couple of years ago. So I think that won't be the same problem with Edey. I feel like he can be a more versatile player, and obviously is going to develop into like a really good shot blocker too. So I like his fit in that team with that team, and obviously as a lob threat with John Morant. So I think it's a nice fit, and also like Nick Claxton, he was already going to resign. So who could you realistically get if you're the Grizzlies? Like if you wanted to go out and get a center like Andre Drummond or something like that, like Capella.
Maybe Hartenstein. I was thinking either
Hartenstein.
Claxton or Hartenstein. Obviously, before finding out that he extended with Brooklyn, I thought he was actually going to leave. To be honest,
I thought he was going. I think like the Grizzlies, it's just not a popular destination right now for any of those guys to go to. So like, I mean, even Hartenstein, like I don't think he'd like consider the Grizzlies if he leaves New York. So I don't know. I think they did that potentially. Like they'll probably still go after a center, but I mean, Edey is someone that's just like a safe option if you need to start him at center because you saw last year Jaren Jackson's not their center.
No, he's not,
he doesn't work at that position. But all right, Connor, who's your loser of the draft?
Yeah, it's pretty simple for me. I think Charlotte's a good pick, but I'm gonna go a different direction. I think Detroit was my loser for 2 reasons. Ron Holland is like one of those classic like high upside athletic guys that you just hope develops a shot. And they hired away a Pelicans coach. I think his name's Fred Vinson, who's like renowned for improving like Lonzo Ball's shot, Herbert Jones's shot. Like I think that's a good move for them. But as far as just like their roster, it's like the 4th year in a row now that they've picked non-shooters. And when you're trying to build a team around Cade Cunningham, having like a Sar Thompson and Ron Holland and Duran and all these guys that just can't shoot, I just like, unless I go and get somebody in free agency here in a couple minutes, like Tim Hardaway Jr. is one guy, but like not really, I mean, moving the needle in 2024, in my opinion. So they're my loser. I just don't think they're drafting the way that you win in 2024. And the second reason why they're the loser for me is they went into the draft without a head coach. I just think that's not a great way to run a franchise because, like, who's to say JV Bickerstaff getting hired, like, is he gonna like Ron Holland? I'm sure they talked about this, but I just think like their order of operations and their whole process is completely backwards in that organization. So that's why they're my loser.
Yeah. Did they get a new GM, by the way?
They did,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
Nice. All right. Tyler?
Yeah, I think well, I mean, it's kind of hard to say just because we don't know what these guys are going to turn into. But the biggest question mark was definitely the Grizzlies taking Zach Edey at 9. Um, but I mean, this is one of those drafts where the talent, there's so much question marks on so many players that it's like if your guy is there, um, they're not willing to take that risk. And I do think that the Grizzlies are kind of that perfect fit. Kind of like what you were saying, Marcos, with Zach Edey next to Ja. He just a younger, better Steven Adams, pretty much bigger, kind of provides that for them. So, and then the other one I had was Miami taking another center at 15. Definitely a question mark. Not really sure the direction they're headed. Um, but again, they seem to like Ware if they'll make it work with him and Bam next to each other. I don't really know how they'll run that, but um, I definitely feel like there's a lot of better talent available at that spot. They could have used some guard play or something else there, but we'll see. They made it work last year with what's his name? Jaquez. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Jaquez
Jaime
Jr.
Jaquez? Yeah.
Jaquez, yeah. Yeah, they made it work last year with him,
Yeah.
so we'll see what they do this year.
Mm.
He didn't really seem to fit either, and he slid right in and found a role. So
True. True.
Yeah. My 2 cents on the Zach Edey pick. Originally, I didn't like it because I was thinking about how it would ruin the spacing even more for, a team led by John Moran, whose shot is, goes in and out, but his game is predicated on uh, applying pressure to the rim. Now, as the Western Conference does get bigger, with obviously we see Jokic is the best player in the conference. With Cat and Rudy as a lineup, several others, even the Lakers are playing pretty big. All of some of the Mavericks are a good example of grabbing a second backup center who they can play at 45 minutes of like big. So the more I've been thinking about it, the more I've been liking the fit as it comes to the direct competition of the Grizzlies moving forward. So originally I did have them as a loser for picking Zach Edey and rooting the spacing even more. But when I look at it, Zach Edey was one of the guys who I was watching him a couple games in the tournament, and the dude doesn't get tired. He's running up and down the court for a big guy his size. Not being fatigued is really special, and I think that plays to the benefit of a Grizzlies team that like to go fast, that runs in transition, and if he can keep up with them, grab boards, get it out quickly, that he could be a major asset. Now, I do think in the playoffs that he'll get played off the court, but I think that's a discussion for a later time. When it comes to another loser I have, or my first loser, I'm gonna zig a little bit or zag a little bit from teams and go actually towards a player, Alex Sarr, who is projected to be the number one overall pick coming into this draft months in advance, and ultimately didn't want to take a workout with the Atlanta Hawks because he wanted to be with the franchise that would give him all the reps and him be the focal court of the team moving forward, which I understand as a young player, but a lot of in the NFL we talk about this, how a team where a player gets drafted has a lot to do with the success of that player's career. In this case, I think it's not only limited to the NFL, but in the NBA. If you get drafted to an incompetent team like the Washington Wizards, you might have the skill set to, or the potential to be an all-star one day. But if you don't have that proper coaching, that mentoring, even within the locker room, within the training staff, a pedigree of winning within the organization, the maximization of your potential might be halted and limited. So ultimately, Alex Sarr not even going out for a workout with a team that's led by a great mind and Trae Young and his ability to play on ball and get you the rock and make it easy for you. I think that was a kind of a loser mentality for Alex Sarr, and I'm sad to hear that he didn't even take a workout with them. But ultimately, I do think Washington came up off the pick because they got a first overall pick talent with the second pick. With that said, Alex are eager to see what he comes out to be, but I think his career would have been better if he played with Atlanta Hawks and played with Trae Young first couple of years. So we'll see how his career pans out. But
Yeah. I think both organizations are kind of going through a developmental process. Like who knows if 1 second. Like who knows if Trae Young is even there beyond this offseason. So I think it might be like a better situation to just go to Washington. So just to like go through they're more in that process already. They already traded Denny Avdia. Like they don't really have anybody else to build around besides Sarr. I mean, as the main guy. Maybe even Kuzma's on the move. So it's just like I think that's a better situation right now. Whereas with the Hawks, I mean, like I think like is it Ricochet? Ricochet?
Risa
Yeah,
Sarr.
Ricochet, yeah, something like that. I don't know if that's the best situation to like develop right now, just given the uncertainty surrounding everything. And maybe that's what Sarr and his camp were looking at, because when you go to like even Washington, I mean, they're about to blow everything up, and then he has Bilal Coulibaly, who he's familiar with, just to grow that team. They're young players. I think it's a better situation right now. It's a little bit more uncertain in Atlanta. I mean, I've heard that their only untouchable players right now is Ricochet and Jalen Johnson. So it's like it's more of a tricky situation over there right now. That's kind of what I would say about that. But I also agree, like that's probably not the best look to do that, as a draft prospect, what he did. But I mean, when you look at it right now, I mean, I think he's in a better situation as a young player to grow. So that's really my take on that. But now that we got the draft stuff out of the way, let's look at a couple of these offseason trades before we, dive into the free agency news. So DeJounte Murray trade, he got traded to the New Orleans Pelicans. I don't have the trade pulled up right now, but I believe it's 2 first-round picks, Dyson Daniels and Larry Nance. I think that's a decent haul for Atlanta. For the Pelicans, I mean, I like that they got their point guard now. I mean, they didn't really have a point guard in the past. I think CJ McCollum was running the point guard. It wasn't really working, not his natural position in the league anyway. So I think that solves that. And obviously, he has two-way ability there. So I think that helps their defense. And then they're also kind of going through a little transition. Brandon Ingram is supposed to be on the move soon. So I'm interested to see like what assets they get back from that. If they can get back a rotational player that can help them out, I think it'll be an even better move for the uh the Pelicans. And yeah, I mean, I kind of was shocked though. I thought Trae Young would be moved before DeJounte. So that's kind of what my take is on that. But I think Atlanta is slowly building up those assets to blow everything up, and that's step one of that. But
I-
Ashford, yeah.
I'd agree. As far as like the Trae Young being moved, I think it's hard to move Trae given not only his contract but also to like Trae Young is kind of like a system within himself as far as like the way he plays. So I feel that's harder to grab as a team trying to trade for him. I think DeJounte easier. You've seen moments even when they were out without Trae, like the team's more fluid. Good closer. Although in Atlanta we haven't really seen him be like that defender he used to be. I do think again that does like involve like culture in Atlanta. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I don't really look at Atlanta Hawks like a defensive culture, and I feel like with the Pelicans they can have that aspect going in. I was really surprised that BI was in the trade because I just saw the Woj notification that Trae Young, I mean not Trae Young, sorry, DeJounte to New Orleans. I'm thinking, okay, BI is finally out. It's kind of been rumors for a minute. So I think for them to not even like move BI and still like flip him, I think is important. Because you have Herb Jones, you have Trey Murphy, and I'm a big Trey Murphy guy. I do think he needs to move to that starting lineup, or at least one of them does. I think Trey Murphy just offers so much space for them that once they move away from BI, they can get maybe a center or just something else in return. And for the Hawks, I mean, you did what you could. I mean, I feel like it was kind of known that it was either going to be Trey DeJounte. So at least you got 2 first-round picks. At least got some of your picks from what you dealt to get DeJounte. But again, it's just kind of I don't know. Atlanta, they're in a weird place. Like I don't know if they're rebuilding. I'd assume they're leaning towards a rebuilding option, but like you have to commit to one in the NBA. You can't be a tweener. You either commit to one or try to go all in. Like being a tweener doesn't get you nowhere. And the more you keep waiting, the more like it hurts your future too. So that'd be my opinion. But I like the Pelicans trade for DeJounte. I think that opens the team up a lot more.
Yeah, for the Pelicans, I mean, it's really just about being fully healthy to really see the full potential of that team. I mean, even if Zion was healthy this year, that team was on a roll, in the second half of the season. Like it's unfortunate that Zion got hurt, but now like it led to like, that first round sweep, and now they're just thinking of kind of changing things up. So it's a tough break for Brandon Ingram, who I think, had some good moments this season, but I feel like it just ultimately wasn't meant to be with that pairing, him and Zion. So yeah, Tyler, what's your take on this DeJounte Murray trade? Or Connor, my bad.
Yeah, I think DeJounte is a good player. I just don't think Atlanta was the right team for him. I think like DeJounte doesn't get enough credit for how well he can like distribute the ball. And like when you already have Trae Young doing most of that, they were constantly kind of like fighting each other, taking turns each possession. And it felt like they didn't really have like that cohesion. And like we were talking about before, Atlanta's not really like a defensive culture. They've always kind of like leaned offense more. I think they moved it at the right time. It was always tricky because they gave up a lot of assets to get him in the first place, so they're trying to like recoup some of those, and I felt like they did a decent job. I think the right path for them actually now is also trading Trae Young. I just don't think you can win with him at the highest level unless you have the perfect team built around him. So I think that move, like maybe not this offseason, but next offseason might be in the cards. But for the Pelicans, I think that they improve their team. CJ McCollum, he's good on some nights, but you can't get the consistent play from him anymore. So bringing in another guard, I think is a big benefit. I was just scrolling through the timeline a little bit. There's been some Brandon Ingram Sacramento buzz a little bit. I'm curious to know if that actually happens. I think the Pelicans are maybe a little bit better without Brandon Ingram. So I'm curious to see their team next year. The West is very competitive, but I think they'll be right in the mix regardless of what happens this offseason.
Yeah, Tyler.
Yeah, I think with Atlanta kind of going into what seems to be full rebuild mode, I agree they'll probably move Trae Young as well. I think it made the most sense for both parties here. Atlanta gets Dyson Daniels, who's a solid young piece, as well as a couple of future firsts. And I like the fit with DeJounte next to Zion. Um, Pelicans really made some noise this year. They look pretty good in the play-in before Zion had some injury troubles there towards the end. But I feel like, yeah, they were just rolling, and yeah, now's kind of the time to make some moves to build around this core, whether they are moving on from Brandon Ingram or not. But they seem to really have a good thing going, and I think that DeJounte is kind of that perfect fit for them. So we'll see what else they do this offseason, but I really like how they're looking going into next year.
Yeah, on this move, I have a couple of points I don't think that have been made yet. Quickly, I think the return that they got for Jadante Murray is not what they expected, and that's why it took so long to move him. But the Pelicans buying low on talent, I think as a philosophy goes, when you buy low on talent, that is a win. So the Pelicans have improved their roster with giving out a couple picks that aren't that valuable. The Lakers 2025 pick that should be pretty good somewhere in the 20s if no injuries happen, and then the worst out of the 2027 pick. So it's probably going to be in the 20s as well. So ultimately, when you pick a team, pick up a good player with little assets, a buy low candidate, that's fantastic. Great GMing by the Pelicans part. So I love that move for them. Again, I think Connor touched on, they get a distributor, and a very slept on part of Murray's game is that ability to be to be the one and not be like a shooting guard, combo guard type of guy. When the ball's in his hands, he can facilitate, get people the ball. I think that's great. And not having Murray Ingram not in the trade. Curious to see what kind of role players they get back for that, what kind of assets they get back for that. I think that's a great move. This is a great move for the Pelicans. I did see some discourse going on in the larger media, national media, with Bill Simmons' take saying that a lot of these teams make these trades thinking they're so close, but they have no chance. Why even make these trades? Da da da. And a lot of people were building on that, agreeing with him. But I think that's just a loser mentality to have. You can't go into drafts as a GM thinking that way. You could maybe say something similar to the Timberwolves, who were a middle league team somewhere in the playing tournament when they went all in for Rudy Gobert. Everybody was slamming them, and now we see their WCF run. Same with the Mavericks this year. They made two trade deadline trades, and all of a sudden they're in the finals. So like these things to me are very matchup dependent. If things break your way and you have the proper roster, if you have a top 12 to 15 guy, I say you make the move and try to be as competitive as possible to be a contender, because who knows? Zion Williamson to me is a top 15 player in the league. If he has a healthy stretch like he did this year, he got hicked up at the final end, which is terrible. But if he didn't, he had the possibility to upset the Thunder. We saw the Thunder couldn't make shots when they played defense, and if there was a rim, if there was a guy applying pressure to that rim, who knows how OKC would have handled it. The first game in that series was a little trickier than the 4-0 sweep might lead you to believe. So ultimately, when we're talking about teams adding good players and talent and assets to their team, I'm all about it. I don't think just because you're not close to contending, you should concede. Now more than ever, because of the second apron rules, I think there's a lot more parity in the league and the ability to go in and get it. And we're not in a dynastic period like Chris Finch said in the playoffs once. There's no one that's so dominant that you can't beat. So you go all in, make your plays, and if everything falls in your place, you might be in the WCF, ECF, looking to make that finals run. So I'm all in. The Pelicans trade for them. The Hawks, they have to get off one guy. I like not, that sunken cost mentality. Like you don't need to dwell in it. It wasn't working. Move on, get what you can get, and move forward. I'm okay with that as well. I did not expect. I think this indicates that they will not move Trae Young. I know Marcos, you're talking about. There's still a possibility of that happening, and there definitely is reporting on that. But I don't see Trae Young being moved. I think someone mentioned Trae Young is more of a system, harder to move him in a trade, especially to a team that's trying to get marginally better, not completely overhaul their team. But with Trae Young, I do have a belief in him. He's been one of the highest assisters and one of the highest playmakers and scorers in the league. I think if you do build a decent defense around him, that they could go far. And ultimately, I don't think they should give up on Trae Young. I think people are eager to have him, and giving up a cornerstone of your team like that for right now, what the market is for him is not that good. I don't think it's worth it. I think you build around Trae Young and see what you can do. They have great talent. They got the first overall pick, who's a 3-and-D guy, great shooter, spacer, plays defense. Jalen Johnson's great. If you can get a center and a two guard to complement Trae, with the defensive minded focus, I think their team is destined to be better than mediocre than we've seen. So, yeah, that's my take on the trade.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying with Trae Young. I mean, it could just be that the experiment with DeJounte just didn't work, and then we go back to seeing Trae, who for a couple years at least, was the best point guard in the East. So I could definitely see that happening. And hopefully the offense just improves. It looks a lot better with they brought in Quinn Snyder a couple years ago to sort of fix the problems that they were having with Nate McMillan. I think it hasn't really maximized that point yet. I mean, they've been low, playing sort of 8 seed the past couple of seasons. So I think this is just an opportunity for a fresh start. I do still think that they're going to move some players around. Like I saw Onyeka Okongwu, DeAndre Hunter, Clint Capella. So I mean, I don't think the team is going to be ready to compete. But I mean, just for some new energy, some fresh energy, I think some moves are necessary, and Trae Young can still be a part of the future moving forward. And if they want to move him at a later date, potentially, I mean, I could still see that happening, but I wouldn't mind if I'm a Hawks fan to see Trae Young coming to the season because I mean he's still obviously an elite, all-star level player. So
Yeah.
I can, see that happening for sure. And then for the Pelicans, yeah, like you're talking about contending and how, teams that like aren't really there shouldn't make those moves. Or Bill Simmons was talking about that. I mean, I think the Pelicans are fairly close to doing exactly what the Timberwolves did this past season. It just has to go into their favor going into the playoffs. Like DeJounte Murray and just a fully healthy squad can easily get them to the point where they need to get to. I mean, Herb Jones, obviously an elite defender, is what all these teams need. You got a shooter and Trey Murphy. You got a center, Jonas Valanciunas, and then you drafted a center in the first round who could eventually overtake him. Zion being healthy, it solves a lot, and then consistent offense from DeJounte Murray and I don't know, maybe off the bench scoring from CJ McCollum. I mean, they're right there. They can easily make that jump. There's a lot of teams in the West that are like, you don't know. There's no locks for the next conference finals. So I think it was a worthy move for the Pelicans to make since they're kind of right there. They're not like all the way out, sort of like the Rockets potentially, that sort of team. They're not there. They're actually pretty close to winning a couple playoff series if they really put things together. So unfortunate past couple of seasons for them with injuries and stuff, but I think just a healthy season, that's a big if, but just a healthy season could get them to where they want to go. So yeah,
Right.
that's just my take on that trade again. And then the Mikal Bridges trade. So yeah, let me just pull it up. I know it was 4 unprotected first. They included Bojan Bogdanovic. That's pretty like the gist of the trade. So
Yeah.
overall, Ashford, you can start. Like, what was your take on this Mikal Bridges trade to the Knicks?
Initially when I seen it, I was just like, I don't know, I was kind of in shock. I mean, again, the Knicks and the Nets relationship, I mean, that's rivals across the street. So I was kind of surprised they did a deal, but then when they kind of went to specifics as to, Mikal Bridges saying he wanted to be with the Knicks, so it's kind of just a rather of cutting the deal while we can instead of just waiting, as I think he has 2 years left in this contract, try and get as much as you can. And also too, like I feel like this past year, like the Nets reputation has been kind of talked down, especially about like trading for Mikal, Joe Tsai and was it Sean Marks? I think the gym. Yeah, just kind of doubling down on, Mikal as a building a bridge for us, and it's just like everybody's kind of see the writing on the wall. But for them to get essentially like their picks back and then to get their picks from Houston, so that way they're they can officially tank without having to worry about, okay, we have to be good so that way Houston don't get our picks. I think that was really smart. And if you just think about it, like from the KD trade alone, I think they said it's 9 first-round picks. Like
Crazy.
obviously KD and then Mikal, like that's crazy. And then you still got still stuff to move. Cam Johnson could be on the move during fitness. Like they have good role players to move around and just fully like tank and dive in. So I think Brooklyn they did all really good. And as for the Knicks, I mean, for a while now we've been talking about like their draft capital. They have a spot for another max player. Obviously you got the Nova boys there, and I mean with Mikal, I think the Knicks seen what Boston did this year as far as like the top 2 guys and elite role players around. And I think with now extending OG, Mikal, Dante DiVincenzo, Julius Randle comes back, like that team defensively was already like top tier, but now with some shooting also to the help Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, I think they look really good. They're probably East contenders for sure. Who knows how far they could go? Um, I think it's a win for both sides. Some people might say it was a big overpay for Mikal, but those draft picks you worry about later. You know what I mean? Who knows what the Knicks look like in the future? Like I think they'll be just fine. So I think while those are picks, they're heavy, 4 of them, but then that's you did what you needed to do,
5.
and the Knicks needed to do. So I think it's a win-win.
Yeah, 5.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Connor, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I think for the Knicks, I think it's just they saw an opportunity just to make their team a little bit better. It makes them less reliant on OG, who they just give a huge contract extension to. I'm just looking at the roster as a whole, though. There's always like a reaction when you like have a big signing like this, and one of those is that Isaiah Hartenstein is probably going to be signing somewhere else just because they don't have enough money probably to pay him. So I do like the move, but that center spot for them is a little weak. Mitchell Robinson is pretty injury prone, so we'll see how if they can bring Hartenstein back or get somebody else to replace him. That's like my only concern with them. But if they figure that out, I think the move is a no-brainer. Their depth is really good. They have like a solid 9 or 10 man rotation. That might not matter with Thibodeau though. I mean, I don't know, like in the playoffs, is he just going to play his starters 48 minutes? I'm not sure, but I don't really care about the first round picks that they gave up because a lot of them are going to be, 4 years down the road, maybe late first. I think it's just a move you have to make, especially with that fan base. And they're really close. We were talking earlier about how some teams make a move and they may not be close. I think the Knicks have a legit shot at the finals this year, especially if Boston and Porzingis, he's not healthy. Al Horford's going to be 38, 39. I think right now is the time you got to strike. So I commend them for being assertive and just going for it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Um, Again, this is one of those trades where it's kind of a win-win for both teams. I mean, Brooklyn just gets pretty much as you probably could get for Mikal Bridges. And the Knicks did the right thing by being in all-in mode at this point, with their core kind of making a surprise run this year without Julius Randle most of the playoffs, and there's no confirmation that he'll be here again next year. But if they are able to bring him back, he can kind of run some five. I'm guessing they'll just run small ball, and Mikal will play 48 minutes a night, but
Mhm.
they'll make it work. And yeah, I
Yeah.
just feel like they're kind of in that situation where, like you guys were saying, those picks, they'll worry about that in the future. Their core is here right now. They're all in their prime. They're all making noise. So time to go all in and get their guy too. Not just the right guy for the Knicks, but that chemistry. That chemistry is something that is unmeasured, but I feel like is crucial in the game of basketball. So
Yeah.
For sure. I think that chemistry, you hit it right on the nail right there, Tyler. Big thing for me is there was a lot of assets, a lot of picks, mortgaging their future, as people like to say. But when you're this close, when you have a superstar that you believe in Jalen Brunson, and you give that back to OG Anunoby in order to stay, you have a team. You still have a secondary scorer who is Julius Randle on the roster, which I think is very key piece of this team. Without him, I don't see them as a contender, but with him, I do see them as a contender. So having that with Mikhail and OG on the court together, that's ridiculous. Now they will have to make some moves to lock down their center position, whether it's Hardenstein or someone in free agency. But ultimately, you have Hart coming off the bench and just a good DiVincenzo coming off the bench, a good 7 to 8 man rotation that matches up really well with the Celtics as well as the Bucks in the Eastern Conference. So I think this is a win-win type of trade. The Nets, have turned around their franchise from being, trade from being having no assets to now being able to control their own destiny, tank next year, try to get Flag or whoever may be a loaded draft the next year. So eager to see how the Nets play this, but ultimately they were able to turn a terrible loss for them into 8, 9 picks, out of Kevin Durant and then a couple picks for Kyrie, and they'll continue to bring more in. As I think Cam Johnson is probably someone who can get you a couple picks as well. So just a great idea for a rebuilding team. Maybe in a couple years we'll see how it goes. You do still have to pick right. You still have to draft right, and you have to develop correctly. So the Nets, they're halfway done with their job, but a great start to a rebuild, I would say. And the Knicks ultimately the same level of scrutiny that the Hawks got after flipping their picks after it didn't work. 4 first round picks for Murray not being able to make that work, and cutting their losses. With the Timberwolves going all in for Rudy Gobert. When you do go all in, there's an expectation of success. There's an expectation of delivering, executing at the highest level. And if they're able to do that, even get to the finals a couple times, ultimately winning the championship is the goal. But this is a good trade. Ultimately, I don't like the amount of assets they gave up. But when you feel like that's the missing piece, when you're one piece away, when the chemistry fits, you have to do what you have to do to get that player. So good luck to them. I think the trades that they gave up 2, 3 years down the line, this core will still be together. So ultimately, that's what matters. But they are pushing up against that second apron if they're not past it already. Something they have to monitor as Mikal Bridges is only on a 2 year deal. So 2 years from now, a year from now, we'll be talking about restructuring. I mean, giving him an extension, and what that looks like financially. Trading, paying Brunson as well, where he's massively underpaid right now. You'll have to pay him upwards of $60 million a year by the time he's up for a new contract. So I don't know how long they'll be able to keep this core together, but if they can, I think they'll contend for 3, 4 years to come.
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot, but I think especially when you trade, between a rival and then of course in conference, you probably have to pay a little bit more. So I think it was good on the
Right.
Nets to have that asking price because they knew, everybody kind of knew the Mikal Bridges Knicks rumors like have been existing for a while. So I think the Nets have set themselves up for the future potentially. I mean, this draft wasn't that good, but when they're able to get, those picks for next year's draft, I mean, they could land, a really good player or two and just, eventually keep stacking up these assets and then go, for a star again like they did with KD and Kyrie. So I think the Nets have a good plan in place long term to really build this thing out. And for the Knicks, I mean, they just like I like the move, just that win now. You don't know what the Celtics are going to do next year. It's not easy, as you saw this year with the Nuggets, to defend an NBA championship. So I think, strike while the iron's hot. If the Knicks were healthy this year, they probably would have beat Indiana. So just establishing that defensive identity again, getting, that wing duo of OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, and then just hoping for durability with OG Anunoby as well. Because I don't really worry about that with Josh Hart, even though he got hurt. I think OG is a little bit more like you can see it happening. They need OG on the court, and then Mikal. I mean, just what he was doing, like he's gonna kind of go back to what he was, I think, in Phoenix as that just elite two-way player, just fills in the roles wherever it is needed. He can hit the shot, create for others. We saw that last year for Brooklyn, so it's a good move. And then obviously like the chemistry is the whole part of it. Like, so I think it's good that Thibodeau has these options with all these lineups that he could potentially play. I'm interested to see how this roster sort of fills out. You guys mentioned Hartenstein. It's probably unlikely that he'll be back. And then Julius Randle, like how he's gonna fit with all this. So just some things that they gotta probably iron out. But overall, I mean, it's looking good so far with this offseason that the Knicks are building. I think they're probably that number one contender for the Eastern Conference champion. So yeah,
Just real quick,
yeah,
I just saw something with Hartenstein. It sounds like him and OKC are meeting right now. So yeah, it looks like the
Yeah,
Knicks are going to need a new center.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean that's gonna be a good
that's
move. Now
good.
I saw that
Yeah,
for I saw a rumor about that with Hartenstein. Okay, see, I think they need exactly
me
that.
too.
Like somebody who can just like get second chance points for you. I think that's just the perfect sort of center, combination with Chet. So I like that move for them, and obviously already got Alex Caruso, so they're off to a good start with the offseason.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Knicks. I mean, I wonder who's that center is going to be. I mean, I think Mitchell Robinson's still there, right? Like he has
Yeah.
durability. He has durability concerns of his own, but like I think they're going to
Yeah,
have to address
they'll need
that.
a center for the other 41 games.
And then I know Precious Achua is not going to get his
Yeah, he's there.
he's not going to get a restricted or his offer extended to him. So he's unrestricted. He's probably not coming back either. I thought he was decent, but they probably want someone else that can improve their front court. So yeah, I wouldn't like it if they put Julius Randle at the five. I think that exposes them a little bit too much. So hopefully they can get someone that just maybe like strengthens their front line. So because Isaiah Hartenstein, that's a big miss. But I'm
Huge.
pretty sure they knew that they weren't going to get him after they made the trade. So yeah, we'll see what they do. Um, and then yeah, any other notable offseason moves you guys want to bring up? I know I kind of touched on Caruso a little
Yeah.
bit there, but any other moves? I mean, the Bulls, Josh Giddey, you want to touch on that maybe?
um, without involving too much emotion. Um,
Bulls fan, by the way.
yeah.
Uh,
Eh, love
Oh,
actually no matter. First and foremost, respect to Giddy. I'm not really the biggest fan as far as him coming to our team. Only just given what we've seen in this last playoffs, and also too just Chicago's in a weird place, and I think with him who meeting Sam Presti, bring about him coming off the bench because of the floor spacing issues. Then it comes Chicago where that's already an issue already. I think that's something where, I don't really see the fit, but I do get that it's more so to move on from Lonzo, which I mean at this point I understand that. I think to not get any picks back is a little crazy. I think Sam Presti does again and did an amazing job with the trade. Um, but when I saw Woj say like the Bulls office were thinking like all-star potential in Giddey, no hate, he's only 21, so things could progress to be maybe. I personally don't see that. But I do think he could have a good year. I feel like because this last year, obviously off the court issues and also two stats have gone down. What was it? Year two, he averaged like 16-7, if I'm not mistaken, because last year was year three.
Yep. Yeah,
So
17, 8, and 7.
yeah, so like there's upside to it. I just don't know how it's gonna work with him needing the ball in his hands, and you have Zach LaVine coming back from injury. You have Kobe White who emerged this season, and him playing that PG role really helped a lot. You have Aya Sumo, so it's like I don't know. It's a lot of guard play who all need the ball in their own way. I think Kobe White probably and Zach LaVine could play off a little bit, but I don't know. I feel like it's all gonna get in the way, and I don't know. I don't know how it's gonna work for Josh Giddey. I know there's Zach LaVine trade rumors. If I'm being honest, he's not getting dealt. The
No,
contract,
he's not. Yeah.
yeah, the contract's too much, and it's done. So I don't know how Giddey flourishes with this team. I'm not gonna lie. But that's partially on him, but also just the Bulls front office and the situation itself. So
I mean, he's an unselfish player though, so that's
Yeah.
a bonus. Like he's gonna get those guys the ball. Whoever is there
Yeah,
for
I
next
think
season. I mean,
I
Zach
think
LaVine.
ultimately, I think the Bulls' issue is Zach LaVine. You guys are. I
yeah,
heard a report. You guys are trying to attach a first round pick to get rid of
next week.
him. There's
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
there's still no market for him. That's that's brutal, man. If you guys can move away from him, and just start building assets, I think that's in your favor. But as while I'm talking, I might as well just give my take on this quick. I like him. I think you guys are sleeping, Mr. Bulls fan over there. I don't love Giddy, but I'm always, always, always when you have talent and you can buy low, that is a win-win-win. It's hard to come by talent in the league. They were able to get him for an aging Caruso, who, yeah, maybe they could have gotten a couple firsts for him, but that was last year. Last year's not this year. Right now, maybe not. Going low at a guy that's 21 years old, that's not usually you don't get that type of guy that's shown something, and get him for that level of player or that level of asset in Caruso. So ultimately, I don't think you guys should beat yourselves up about it. I love when you get talent for low. Buying low on talent is always a good thing in my opinion. So I'm okay with the move.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that. Um, it was initial reaction obviously was strange. They didn't get any picks, but yeah, hindsight player for player swap. Caruso's not doing anything for you. You get a 21-year-old who, besides all the off-season stuff that's already going on, or off-court stuff, I should say, that's already going on this year. He was well known around the league as an up-and-coming star. So I think he definitely has the potential to be a good building piece for Chicago. They're in a really weird. They're probably the weirdest position team right
Yeah.
now because they're just
Yes.
not bad enough to rebuild, but they're not good enough to do anything else. And yeah, I feel like that Zach LaVine trade window closed a couple years ago, and it's just
Yeah.
they're in a very weird place. But yeah, I don't think getting a 21-year-old Josh Giddey is the worst thing in the world. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think part of the reason why OKC traded him too is because I'm just looking at his contract details. Like, I think it's next offseason he's due to be extended, and it's one of those things where they want to try to keep as much cap flexibility with this new CBA, and it's kind of like an NFL move when like by year three, if like the franchise quarterback isn't working out, like they just decline that fifth year option. So. I just don't feel like they probably had discussions and were like, this guy is not good enough to warrant the extension that we want to give him or like that he's demanding. So we're just gonna sell right now and then get a piece that can help us like immediately in Caruso. So I think it actually is a win-win for both teams. But in the bigger picture, I think the Bulls are sort of stuck where you don't want to be, where they're always kind of like the 10th seed or 8 to 10 seeds in the play-in, and like I just feel like they need to commit to probably rebuilding. I just don't know how they're going to get enough talent right now to really be a true contender. So the other alternative is just bottom out and just start from the ground up.
Yeah. Other moves. Denny Avdia,
To your Blazers.
to Trailblazers.
I think that's a
I was
huge
shocked by
one.
that.
Yeah, I was
That was a
shocked
weird
by that
move.
too.
I mean,
Why were you shocked, Marcos?
yeah.
I mean, he was kind of like when he got more minutes towards the end of the season, he was kind of shaping up to be like one of those core players for the future. The guys that you could see like around there long term with what he was able to do with more responsibility. You knew that they were going to bring in some, guys in the draft, obviously, to be that real franchise, centerpiece. But like you could see Danny Advia once he got the opportunity being a guy that could be a complementary player. But I was shocked by that because I just thought like, yeah, he was a real part of, the organization moving forward. I thought, it was set in stone that he was going to be there. I didn't expect him. I expected Kuzma to be moved. So I'm kind of shocked. He's obviously, a young player still with a lot of potential. So going over to that situation, I think can be good in Portland. I just wasn't expecting that for Washington because now they're even more, in a different phase because with Kuzma probably already moving, not fitting the timeline over there, like they're gonna be. It's not as promising as it was before. I would say. I thought Avdia just was a really good asset that they could have used long term.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's literally what I was thinking too, man. They have all the cap space in the world. Like, why is Kyle Kuzma around and he's not? That makes absolute no sense to me. But the Trailblazers got a steal of a guy, great player. A lot to come, great potential. The Blazers, I think, are doing tanking correctly. I love what they're doing.
Hmm.
I don't know like how it's gonna work with Klingon and Aiton and Robert Williams, like that kind of a crowded front court right there. And
But
then like
let's be let's be real though. Rob Williams, is he really there?
He's
Like
gonna get
he's there,
dealt.
but is
Yeah.
I
he really
mean
there?
he
Yeah.
should
He's
get
just like
dealt.
he's injured. He's just injured all the
He
time.
should get dealt. I mean then all right, Duop Reith. Let's bring in Duop Reith. I guess he's the other guy. But Chauncey Billups, I think I'm still surprised that he's still a head coach in the league right now. I think they can move on from him and get somebody like there's a lot of head coach assistants out there like Mike Nori from Minnesota. Like as much as I wouldn't want to see him go,
Hey,
like bring
it's all
him over
good.
to Portland, like he'll make some things work. But uh, I like what Portland's doing though. I think they just drafted the best player available in Donovan Clingan. He was rumored to
Yeah.
be like that top 3 pick.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
I like what he can do immediately over there. He obviously was a part of a winning program in college. School Henderson showed promise towards the end of the year, and then all those young guys like Kamara, Duop Reith,
Shaden.
Shaden Sharp didn't really play last year, but a lot of guys that showed promise when they got the opportunity. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do. It's a nice little nucleus of young talent. So we'll see what they do in this offseason, but I think some good moves for them so far. Just don't know if Chauncey Billups is that guy to guide them into that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't know how Chauncey still has a job. I agree.
Yeah. I don't know if there's any other moves. I mean, Houston obviously acquired all those picks in that deal with
Actually,
Brooklyn.
I want to talk about Houston. Earlier I talked about how what Bill Simmons said about why are you trying to go get this guy if you're not close to contending. That's actually a team that I agree with. There's no need to rush the issue there. I don't think they're close enough to be trying to get KD where KD's window is
That's
2 years, maybe 3 years. Like
yeah.
that makes zero sense. I love what they're doing there. Maybe they need to tread Sengun down the line or whatever, but you don't know quite yet. So stay pat, do what you got to do and develop your guys. But until then, like Whitmore's still young. Even what's his name? Jabari Smith is still young. Give these guys a couple more years to play, and I think
Yeah.
there has a lot of potential. If you blow that up for KD, you're rushing everything, and that's just I don't like that at all. But yeah,
It's like
what do you guys think?
Yeah. I mean, they were right there like to get that 10 seed from the Warriors this past season. So
Hmm.
I think just running it back another year would do him well. I mean, Jalen Green showed a lot of promise. Like that was definitely the best season of his career last year. So I like what they can do. I think Amen Thompson's only going to get better. They'll have Tari Eason back. And obviously, I think Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks were good additions for them. So it's only growing. I mean, KG has that relationship with Ime Udoka. So I think that really what sparked that rumor. I think that's a player you can potentially get down the line, maybe next year, the last year of his deal. But right now, I think just continuing to build this out for sure. I can see them in the plan at least next year with what they built going into the offseason.
Yeah, real quick on that. I think Reed Shepherd, I think, was a really good pick for Houston also. Their overall roster was kind of lacking in three-point shooting, so I think he just gives them a different element. But yeah, you can't rush the process with that. You don't, the last thing you want to do is just like cap your ceiling too quickly because you take on like a bunch of big contracts, even if it is Kevin Durant. We've seen like Kevin Durant maybe not be as impactful to winning as he was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So I think they'll get the right guy in due time, but it's going to take a couple seasons really for that star to become available. But I like where they're headed. Like Marcus, you mentioned that for a minute there, it looked like they were in the play-in mix, and then they kind of fell off a little bit. So I expect them to be in the play-in this year. And if all goes well, maybe threaten the top six bid if like there's just somebody takes a huge leap that we're not expecting. But I think they're doing it right there. And I love the fact that they did take the chance with Ime when he's sort of radioactive around the league and not a lot of teams really wanted him. And I think they're seeing the biggest improvement on the defensive end. So I'm excited to see what they do this year.
I love Ime. I love Ime with that group. You're right.
And you were just mentioning about like young teams that's kind of the theme so far is like young teams messing up their progress. I mean, the Suns definitely did that, I would say, with what they had been building and then kind of messing that all up for KD. I mean, obviously KD is KD, but they were building something special, and I know it was a disappointment losing to the Mavericks in that game 7, and things didn't go right the next year, and then they rushed it, getting KD, and ownership wanted their say and got a new coach. Then they already fired that coach and got a new coach. So just a lot of things going on right now that I think could have all been avoided. So I like what Houston's doing. I mean, they're obviously aggressive, showing that interest in KD, but I'm sure they know like they have a lot of pieces right now to build, and then potentially make those moves down the line, even for someone else, like a younger star, I guess. So yeah, I like what Houston's building over there for sure. I think those are pretty much the most notable off-season moves. I mean, Wendell Moore obviously got moved, but no, sorry.
Yeah, I was like, right,
We don't gotta
no
talk
more.
No, shout out
Did I
Wendell
see a
Moore.
rumor that Marcus Smart got moved, or is that just a rumor, or did that actually happen?
That was a rumor.
It was a rumor
around the draft, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing official with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that team.
Clippers trying to move
excited.
Russ.
Who?
Clippers?
Clippers?
Yeah, nothing official yet, but they're in talks.
I mean, we can get into some of these free agency moves so far.
Okay.
Connor, I don't know if you want to touch on it, but I saw I think the Warriors waived Chris Paul. I mean,
Yeah.
there's rumors about him going back to Phoenix. I mean, do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a bigger discussion, but I think the moves that the Warriors are making right now are moves that are signaling that they're not actually serious about winning anymore, and they're trying to just usher in a new era. There's been a couple, not moves, but like near moves that I thought were pretty interesting. Paul George was rumored that they offered a trade with like Kuminga and Moody and a couple like a first. The Clippers ended up declining it, and then another one that just came out was Levine was offered for Andrew Wiggins and Chris Paul, and the Warriors declined that. I understand like none of those moves are perfect. Like Paul George is obviously not a perfect player at this stage, and Levine is obviously not a perfect player. But if the goal is to try to at least be competitive next year, I think like you try to get one of those guys. Chris Paul, like I thought they got Chris Paul last summer to have that salary slot to then maybe trade him at the deadline and see what you can get that 30 million is can you split that into two players? But the fact that they just let that go for nothing just signals to me that like they wanted to save money and just get off of Poole's contract, which for a rebuilding team, I guess is fine, but for a team that has still one of the 5 to 7 best players in the league, I just think it is a little ridiculous in my opinion, but I'd be curious to know like what you guys think.
There's a chance that that was kind of their plan too, was to hopefully move him for that piece at the deadline, but they probably just didn't have any takers for it. I mean, just an aging Chris Paul with that contract, it was already kind of for me anyway, it was a big question mark when they made the move last year, like how that fit was going to work. And yeah, it just seems like one of those things that didn't quite work out, but it might just be that Chris Paul's at that point in his career too, where we might need to be talking about him more as going to a team to be that just veteran leadership instead of going somewhere and just being that like starting point guard and team leader. I don't know if he'll be fine with that, but I just feel
Yeah.
like I feel like that he'd be better in that role at this point in his
You know,
career.
for sure, Tyler. I don't even know if that's a discussion anymore. Like, if that not the case, like who's seeing Chris Paul as the starting? Like, he's a great bat. Even for before we drafted Rob, I was thinking about if I think there was rumors like the Timberwolves could, if they buy out Chris Paul, they could sign him as a backup. Like that rumor in the buyout market last year. Like, I think
Mhm.
he's a good mentor, a good backup at this point. But like you said, um, not a starting point guard. But I think the Warriors. It's sad to see. I think it's all those years of cap space hell that's finally got to them. They don't want to keep paying for a team that is mediocre. That they can't seem to get a good trade on the table. And I heard about the Clippers deal that it was actually the Clippers kind of being the party poopers in this situation, saying no, we're not actually we don't like this trade enough, and we're not going to send you to the Warriors. So the Warriors would have loved that deal. Obviously, they offered up that first pick, Kaminga, Moody, all their young guys. But man, I would have loved to see that trade go through for both teams. But ultimately, it's the Clippers, sipping on some haterade, not allowing another California team to, come up off their guy, which is
Mhm.
interesting to see. But Ballmer, he has some passion to him.
Thoughts?
I don't really have too much thoughts on this, not gonna lie. Yeah, I mean, just kind of waving the white flag, Chris Paul. Um, I don't know with the Warriors' future. It's weird. Not being able to get
Right?
Paul George, Klay Thompson. He's pretty much not gonna be on the team anymore. Um, there's not really much uphill growth from this team. And the way they just with how quick the NBA grows, especially the West too. Um, so yeah, I don't really have too much on this to be honest. I do think Chris Paul I saw rumors like maybe like the Spurs or the Clippers maybe off the bench. I could see that, but I don't know. I don't. Yeah, I'm. It's funny how like this free agency is like Paul George like the big like #1 guy, and we're kind of just like seeing where he goes. And I'm just like, this is a lot of like I get it. This is a lot of like face for Paul George, and also too Paul George still can come here and can like contribute a lot. Um, but I think that was the Warriors like only shot to really like I guess get back to their reigns. But I think that window's closed now.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marcus, can I say something real quick too? Kind of a hot take, but if I'm Steph Curry, do I go to the front office and ask for a trade?
I don't think it's a hot take at all.
I
Talk
think you do.
talk to me.
I'd be like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I'm just looking at this and it's like, okay, if you're prioritizing like Kaminga and all these guys that you drafted, and it's like clearly we're not going to win next year. I'm going to turn 37, I think, next March. Like, I don't want to have a situation like Kobe did in this last year with the Lakers, where they just had like all this like these young guys around him and they're absolutely terrible. So, I mean, I just think if I was him the last few years, I don't think he would because he's super loyal, but like I would look at it and be like, there's a lot of teams that might need a point guard, like out east maybe. Like if I just joined their team, do I put this team over the top? Like, is my priority just playing with one team for my whole career, or trying to win a fifth ring? I don't know. I would consider it if I was him, but I probably won't happen.
And even as a front office move, like, what are we doing? Like, I understand he's selling tickets to a new arena, but like, wasting a prime of one of the top 10 players ever, in my opinion, top 3 point guard ever, still in his prime, like you mentioned, Connor. This is a utter waste. We hate when we see this with LeBron. He's always pressing the issue. They still have a lot of picks. I think they have all of their future picks. I don't think they've traded any of them. So having the ability to make a trade, make the team better, and choosing not to is a huge, like, just indictment on what they're looking to do in the future. So I'm thinking, even for a GM at a head coach move, move on from Steph Curry a year early and get the assets, restart that rebuild. You know what I'm saying? Like, imagine him with I don't know, a team like Orlando Magic, and they can give him every young player that they have that's not named Paulo Banchero, every pick that they have, and him and Paulo with that defense. Like, is that not a real contender? Like, so ultimately, I think that was just the first move that came to my head. Probably, not the best move, but just the idea of, like, when you're at that position with your star, it probably won't happen because of what he means to that organization. But man, if there's nothing more I hate in the NBA when you have one of the greats, legends in the game, not being able to compete in his prime. I think that's a total failure for all their fan base, but all of NBA basketball's fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Um, I think it is one of those situations where obviously the right move would be to move him now and get as much as you can. I mean, even a 37-year-old Steph Curry, you'll get multiple picks, young players. Like, some team will go all in to get Steph Curry. However, like you were saying, just with how much he means to that organization, I feel like it is going to be one of those situations where he just stays there with a bunch of young players and they're just mediocre for the next few years until he retires. Almost as just a legacy thing, but yeah, that would definitely
Farewell tour.
be, yeah, probably the worst thing for basketball, but I mean, it'd be what the Warriors fans would want. It'd be what, well, probably not all of them, but the super Steph Curry fans, I'd imagine you'd want your favorite player to stay there forever, and even if it means just being mid for the next few years. But I
Yeah,
definitely agree the right move would be to move him sooner rather than later,
yeah.
especially with talks of Clay leaving. I mean, like you said, they're pretty much confirming they're hitting the reset button, at least on most of their pieces. So,
hmm Yeah, it blows.
Yeah. I'm seeing, just to change topics, I'm seeing Russell Westbrook potentially, on the move. I think Tyler was mentioning it earlier. There's mutual interest with the Denver Nuggets. How do you guys think that fit would work?
I don't know what to think of it. I mean, it could help Denver because Reggie Jackson's no longer on the team. I think they just have some bench depth. We saw in the playoffs how much that really affected them. Um, I think with them potentially losing KCP and I guess Christian Brown having like a bigger role, they need all the bench help they can get. And Russ provides that. With the Clippers, he had a good year this past year. Um, and I'd be interested to see how it works, just the gel wise. But I think Russ can still contribute at a solid level, especially coming off the bench in 2024.
Yeah,
So I'd be intrigued to see how that plans out.
yeah. What does this mean for the Clippers? Is my question.
Um, I don't even know. I did see something that they gave James Harden 2 year 70 mil, so James Harden's locked up.
hmm
Um,
hmm
and this is assuming Paul George is out the door. I mean, he's still meeting with the Clippers. I think they said on Sunday. Um, but I don't know, with that money, 35 mil, James Harden, you got Kawhi money. I mean, you could bring back Paul George, but it's like, as that team, I feel like the ceiling's kind of already on the wall. Like, you have like a certain window in the league, and I feel like there's kind of past already, especially with the West getting better, like around them. So if I'm Paul George, I don't know, you kind of see the writing on the wall. Like, make your peace rather than just staying in something too long. Especially in the league, you don't want to be in something too long. You either bite the bullet or you suffer the consequences later. So I don't know what the Clippers are gonna look like, to be honest.
Yeah, I would say I think Russ probably helps them a little bit, but I think if they just are relying on young guys to replace what KCP does, I don't see like how they get any better from that. I think they're going to be competitive, obviously, if they have Jokic there. Like Jokic is probably the best floor raiser in the NBA. I mean, he won 48 games with all those guys injured a couple years ago. So you're going to be competitive, but if they like just is that if that's like the move that they make, I think their days of like being like a finals team are over. I think it's like losing KCP means that much to them. And I don't really think Christian Brown is really the same like player archetype as KCP. So it'll help a little bit, but I think without an adequate KCP replacement, it's finished for them.
Yeah, the second apron that sucks. It's one of the issues with the second apron, making you lose one of the core guys on your team. I agree with you, Connor. Man, losing KCP is a big blow. I do think like I think you took it a little too far saying like they're not like finals contenders. I think Jokic is just that good, where like if you plug in a mid-level exception guy who can shoot a three pretty good, you slot him in at the two, and you still have a really good roster. One, three, four, five. Outside and good backup if you can get something going with Wallace, and what kind of moves you can make on that front. But yeah, I do think that's a blow, but man, the Thunder, I mean, those guys, in my opinion, if the Timberwolves didn't beat the Nuggets, I think the Nuggets would be back in the finals. I think they matched up really well against the Mavs and, against the Celtics as well. So we could be talking about back-to-back champions if the second half of the seventh game seven didn't happen in that series. So I don't think they're too far gone. But it definitely sucks. I think it blows for them. It cuts their margin of error by a large amount.
Yeah. Um, I think overall the fit with Westbrook and the Nuggets can be really good. Just giving them that energy off the bench. I think they've been missing that for a while, probably since Bruce Brown. And then, if they do lose KCP, that's obviously big, because we haven't really seen it yet from the young guys to be able to step up like Christian Brown, probably the expected guy that you would think of. I don't know if he's ready yet. He is a nice energy player, but as a offensive player, he doesn't really bring the same impact shooting wise and just the ability to play off of Jokic how KCP does. And
Mhm.
just like defending your best player, are you gonna trust Christian Brown to defend your best player like KCP does? I don't know if you can do that yet. So I'm interested to see like what else they can do besides adding Westbrook and what resources they have to really build out the team a little bit more besides all those young options they have off the bench. Um, I mean, I don't count out the Nuggets at all with Jokic, but I definitely don't think they're finals contenders if they don't really strengthen this team this offseason because they were missing some things and it was obviously a reality check losing the second round in the playoffs. So I was expecting them to have a really good offseason, especially after last year's offseason. Like the best addition they had was like Justin Holiday. Like that's not good enough. So I think they had a decent draft. I like the big men they picked up, but I think they just need to build it out with this free agency. So hopefully that they're able to make some moves that compensate if they are to lose KCP. I don't think Westbrook's enough to do that, but I think he's a good start with what he brings. Obviously, he showed a lot in LA with the Clippers. So I think as long as the fit is there, I think he can run that second unit pretty well
Yeah.
alongside Jamal Murray. So I think it'd be a good fit, but hopefully the Nuggets can, further improve their offseason because just losing KCP for nothing would be pretty tough.
Yeah, I like the fit. I like the fit because they just need an engine, an offensive engine. So Russ has been that his whole career, and coming off the bench now, that's what he is in this season of his career or this stage of his career. So, yeah, definitely, I'm excited to see him as a backup. Like as a Timberwolves fan, scares me a little bit. Russ coming off the bench with that tenacity with that team. So, but they need a backup center. more than anything. A real backup center, not just a backup center, but like an actual viable backup center. And I don't know what route they can, go to acquire that. So that I think that's the biggest hole, more so than even if they did lose KCP.
Yeah,
DeAndre Jordan in 2024 doesn't do it for you at the backup.
they keep extending him. I don't know why, but
They extended him.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I don't get it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think this dude is supposed to be the next Deron Holmes is supposed to be the next guy for them. Uh so
Yeah.
we'll see. But
He's
like I
good.
don't know if he's ready. I don't know if he's ready for that yet. I mean, yeah, I just don't understand that move to bring back DeAndre Jordan. I mean, he's obviously a good locker room chemistry guy, like brings that excitement off the bench, but like yeah, like you said, Connor, like what are we doing? If you're really trying to contend, like you do need that big behind Jokic because when he's not on the floor, they really suffer. So um, hopefully they are able to address that because that is a hole on their team that I've noticed as well. And then just yeah, overall depth was a concern last year. So just addressing that, I think would bring them back to where they were a couple years ago. But Jokic and Murray, that keeps them in the race, but they're gonna have to figure out a way to get past some of these other teams in the West that are slowly building like a better brand of basketball than what they have. Because Jokic can only get you so far himself. Like we saw him win MVPs with mediocre, guys around him, but like you can't win finals with that. So that's what they're trying to, strive for.
Yeah.
Any other moves that we should talk about? I mean, I guess Klay Thompson, of course, that's a big move. Like him not being there.
Yeah.
He's moving on. There's a couple options. I mean, I saw three options. I saw Dallas. I saw Orlando. I'm not sure what the other one was.
The Lakers.
The Lakers. Okay, that makes sense. His dad played there, I believe, and staying in California. So they're working on sign and trade options, so they'll get something back in return. I saw okay, Mavericks, Clippers, 76ers, Lakers potentially are the moves, and that I think that has a lot to do with where PG ends up too, because those are similar teams. So yeah, first question I guess I would ask for you guys is, do you think it was the right decision to move on from Klay Thompson if you're the Warriors? That's my first question, Ashford.
I'd say so. Yeah. I mean, also too, the season it was kind of up and down for him, and especially how it ended 0 for 10, little tough. And I think also too financially what Clay wants versus what they can give, and just the return value as far as like what Clay is nowadays. I don't think it. I think the writing was on the wall. And they don't really have much again to really expand their team as far as like improving. And I think to give that money to Klay Thompson when you kind of saw what happened, especially last season, and
Yeah.
again, just to reiterate how much the West is like improving around them, I don't think it would have made sense to give what Clay wanted based on how he actually played. So I think it's just time to move on. And Clay, Golden State legend. I mean, I'm sure he's gonna get his flowers even when he's on another team. But I think it's just time to move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Clay.
Yeah.
It was a tough year for
I'll
Clay
go ahead,
last
Marcus.
year. Yeah, I was just gonna say it was a tough year for Clay last year. Like I was gonna say just like a little lighthearted joke. Like everywhere I go on like social media comments, I always see like don't forget Klay Thompson went 0 for 10 in an
Yeah.
elimination game. So I mean, just remembering that, like there are a lot of good memories from him being in Golden State, but like last year, I mean, it was just a struggle. You really couldn't depend on him, and then his two-way ability overall
It's not
has
there
really
anymore.
lessened. It's not there anymore. So you're not getting that elite sort of defensive play out of him, and then a high level scoring. So I think it was the right move, but you do want to, keep a contending team around Stephen Curry. So that's a big concern. I mean, the writing was kind of on the wall for a couple of years now. This was probably one of the bigger reasons why I would assume why Bob Myers left in the first place. Just with these decisions that are coming, you having to decide whether you extend Draymond. They decide to extend Draymond to a 4-year deal. And now losing Clay, I mean, like, how's it all going to work out? Your young players aren't really that good yet developed. I mean, they had a good draft last year, but it's not a contending team around Stephen Curry, and he's only getting older, like Connor mentioned. So just a lot of interesting moves on the horizon for the Warriors. Just I don't know what's going to happen, honestly. But yeah, Connor, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like he turned down a 2-year, $48 million offer from them, and I just think like what I've been reading is that he hasn't felt prioritized, and he kind of wants one of those like legacy contracts, like the Lakers gave Kobe on the way out. Not a great way to run a team if you just hand out those contracts, and so there's like a lot of disagreements, and so now instead of getting 20, what is that, 20 something million a year from that one offer, he's probably going to sign somewhere for maybe like 10 to 13 million, just kind of out of spite, which I guess is good. But I mean, people got to remember, like, he got benched halfway through the season for Pajemski because he was so bad to open up the year. So you're going to get like, I would say maybe like 10 vintage Clay games throughout a season where he might drop like 35 and hit 7 or 8 threes, and it looks like his old self. But everything around that picture, you're really going to need a team where he's like not dependent to be like a guy that you need night in and night out. So like if he's like the fourth best player in your team, I think it could be beneficial. But at this stage, like his defense is gone, and he's kind of like a one-way player. So I think it was a good move to move on from him.
Yeah, I agree. Um, but I do think, like we were talking about earlier, it's only half of the moves that the Warriors need to make this offseason. Time to trade the other Splash Bro and completely build around this core now. Um, I feel like trading Clay kind of, or not bringing back Clay, I should say, kind of solidifies that they're rebuilding. But I don't know if they'll be able to fully commit by trading Steph as well. So I think it was the right move for them. Um, Again, he's just gonna demand too much money that they're not able to pay him, and him being inconsistent is kind of the biggest reason to stay away, in my opinion. For years he was just a great second option for that reason of being consistent night in and night out. So if he doesn't have that, he's just a occasional spark plug for your team, and I just feel like that's not what the Warriors need, and he'll fit right in on some contender, hopefully. I'd like to see him somewhere. He'll probably sign to some crappy team, like Connor was saying, for like a big contract out of spite. But um, I do think it was the right move for the Warriors in this case, though.
Yeah, it just sucks that I agree it's the right move. They got to get rid of him. I think it's a year too late, frankly. But better late than never. Hopefully they could have got some assets back for him maybe a year ago, but now it's looking a little bit thinner. But they will get something back from him. The Lakers, I don't know how I feel about that. I'm a Laker fan, and I think he would have a lot of expectations if he goes to the Lakers. We're talking about high expectations, probably not what you want for him at this stage of his career. I would agree with that. But putting him on the Lakers with the lights are the brightest. We all know playing next to LeBron and AD, as soon as LeBron passes you that ball and Clay misses and misses and misses again in a playoff game, he's gonna, Laker fans are gonna want his head. So I don't want that from him, even though I'm a Laker fan and I would like the shooting. I think I'm not a big fan of Austin Reeves. Like I like him, but like if you were to go get someone who's great at one thing, allegedly shooting for Clay, I think that'd be better than Reeves. But ultimately, I think they would give up more than they would like to, even for Klay Thompson. And then now Klay Thompson's in this high pressure environment, which doesn't work the best for him. I think the best fit for him is the Orlando Magic team, where they'll respect him, give him a couple of looks, through in the game, and he'll be able to spread out the court for some of the young guys who are promising, like Paulo. So I think that's the best fit that I have in mind from all those teams mentioned outside of the 76ers. I think he'd be good there too, but it sounds like they're probably going to get Paul George. So, but yeah, I want to see the Magic going after a guy like this because he has that pedigree. Ultimately, when he's respected, I think he can provide a lot to the team. So, having him there next to Paulo and Franz, being able to spread out the court next to a great high level defender in Suggs, I think that's a good team, man. I kind of like the Magic. They're one of my favorite up and coming teams. So I would like to see them with a little bit more championship pedigree.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I like the Magic. I think that makes like a lot of sense. I don't know if that's the move that he would want, but like that makes a lot of sense just considering what they're building. I mean, he'd obviously provide that veteran leadership. on the court and everything like that, and then just pairing alongside with Paulo and Franz and Suggs. Um, I like that move for sure if that was to happen.
Mhm.
I also kind of thought about the Mavericks move, but like I don't know, like if he's not able to provide consistent shooting, I think it'd just be a lot more pressure over there. So I feel like it'd be a nice fit for Orlando to get him. That'd be a really big move for that organization. Just I don't know if it's likely to happen, but I'm hoping the Orlando Magic can make that sort of move this
Yeah.
offseason that can kind of set them up for the future because I feel like they're missing something there that really kind of prohibited them from getting past the first round. But still, a lot to really build on going to 7 games in the first round this year. So
Yeah. I
yeah.
agree. One thing on that, I think I do love the fact that they need offense. I think it's pretty clear from the guard position somewhere. But I did hear a lot more of those rumors in the regular season. I've seen those rumors die down a little bit now that we're getting closer to the free agency window or we are here. But that Mavericks pick, I think I've been hearing a lot more of that. I think they tweeted out, I think it was Shams or something, that they were getting close to, they were having discussions about bringing Clay to the Mavs. That Bobby Marks actually, he's the one who said that from ESPN. And what's interesting about that is they would have to give up Derrick Jones Jr., which is a huge, huge, huge point of attack defender for them in the playoffs this year, and as a whole in the regular season. Without him at that point of attack defender, locking up the Anthony Edwards of the world, the SGAs of the world, it's going to be really difficult for the Mavericks, in my opinion. And like you said, Marcos, that's a lot of pressure for a guy who's been inconsistent with the shot. I do think that would be a step backwards for the Mavericks. And ultimately, I think the Mavericks caught lightning in this playoff run, but I don't think this playoff run is something that you can bank on to be replicable unless you make the right moves. And I think losing a point of attack defender like Derrick Jones Jr. is actually a step in the wrong direction. I think you just let Tim Hardaway walk. Klay Thompson's a light skinned version of that guy. So
Yeah. Any other moves to mention? I'm not really seeing too
There's
much going on right now.
there's one
Uh,
that just happened. Kevin Porter Jr.
oh yeah, I just saw Kevin Porter Jr. He's coming back to the league, joining the
Um,
Clippers.
yeah,
I think Drummond to the
and
Sixers.
Drummond to the Sixers.
Yeah, that's like the only other one so far.
Yeah, not really a lot.
wow, I kind of like that for the Clippers. Kevin Porter
You
is
think?
sneaky good. Yeah, he's low key. I kind of liked him before the off court situation. Like, wow, okay, that's a sneaky good move. I'm surprised the Lakers aren't the ones who did that.
Yeah, I mean,
Um, I see this Drummond move too. Cool.
yeah, I'm interested, like, just to see what Philly does, like, filling out their roster because they obviously have a lot of cap space. Paul George is heavily rumored to go there, and then like I've been even seeing like KCP potentially. They're trying to find a way to get both of them. So like, and then you see these Tobias Harris rumors potentially being on the moves. I don't know how real that is, but like how their roster is going to look. You mentioned in drafting McCain earlier, like what his role is going to be. So like I like what the 76ers are going to be able to do this offseason. Also, like I'm just thinking about it watching the TV here, like how are the Spurs going to build around Wemby this offseason and like in the future going forward? Like, do you think the Spurs can build a team this offseason that can potentially contend for play-in contention next year?
At this rate, giving up Rob Bellingham, man,
Not at this rate.
I don't really see it, but if someone sees it, I want to hear your point of view.
There's no need to not. I know Wemby is like.
Nothing, not like a crazy move, but like just moves that can get them in the right direction, like Minnesota, maybe with Pat Bev, something like that.
Um,
It's a little too soon for that.
yeah.
I think they're like a year or two away from like a Pat Bev type move.
Mhm.
I hear it.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously with that young talent, you never know when they'll really take that next step. So there's obviously every season there's a chance there for that surprise team to make that run and they can make some noise. But I agree with Connor. I think they're still like a year out, maybe even a couple years.
Okay. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I like Drummond though. I want to talk on Drummond quick. Just a couple.
Sure.
Well, I like that move. I think in the trade deadline, he was really sought after. I was really scared that the Denver Nuggets were going to get him. I think he's a great backup big in this league. He grabs rebounds at a high clip. He plays decent defense around the rim. You can't ask too much more from a backup center nowadays. They got him for a 2 year, 10 mil. Man, that's great. I think that's great value for a team that has Joel Embiid and, with his injury issues, that team is still really good with Andre Drummond potentially playing like 10, 15 games in his absence. So, man, I like that. I'm glad none of the Western contenders to the Wolves got it. So, I mean, competitors of the Wolves got it. So, happy about that.
Yeah.
I think the Clippers could have used him. I think um, the Nuggets could have used him. The Suns could have used him. There's a few teams in the West that need a backup center.
Yeah. I mean, the Suns are definitely limited with their resources though, so like
Yeah,
who
for
knows what
sure.
they're gonna do to build out their roster. But I think
Sure.
yeah, Drummond will definitely be a big boost for the 76ers. Obviously like a really good rebounder. I think that's what they could use. Not really getting that. I mean, not really getting that out of Paul Reed, I think his name is last year. Like it's more of a just like a scoring sort of center that I don't think gives them that same impact that Drummond can. So I like that move in that sense. And then like also I just think familiarity too with that situation could be good for him. And then like as a whole, like Philly, I think they performed well when they were healthy last year going into that playoff series against New York. I think they can build on that this year with the offseason that they have. So far, I mean, it looks like it's going to be a good one. So yeah, that's my take on that. Anything else? Anything else you got?
No, I feel like we hit it all on the head. Um, yeah, Clay, Paul George. I mean, I guess it's just waiting for these next couple of days to see where everything kind of transfolds. But until then, I mean, I guess just waiting around, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Curious to see who signs Kyle Anderson.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I could see the Nuggets signing Kyle Anderson for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think Minnesota's going to get Kyle Anderson back.
Yeah, it
Uh,
doesn't look.
it's not looking good, but like I'm kind of already come to terms with that. Um, yeah, I'm also like what the Suns will do too to like fill out their roster because
Mhm.
like I know they just re-signed Royce O'Neal, but they're trying to get that point guard like who that could be. I believe they drafted one, but like you know Chris Paul potentially being a guy that they could bring in if that works, because Budenholzer's coming in. I don't know if he wants that. I think he was mentioning that in this press conference. Like we do need a natural point guard, and that backcourt with Booker and Beal just wasn't that last year. It wasn't just fluid, and they were injured and they didn't really get a lot of time together. But I think they could do well with a point guard, like a natural point guard, come in there and make everything work. But then, like, how would the lineup be? Would you put Booker at the three? There's different things that you can look at with that, but they're definitely gonna have to have a way better year. Then if they don't, potentially see that getting blown up next year, like KD and Booker for sure being on the way out. So it's a big year for the Suns next season.
Mhm.
Huge.
But yeah, man, I think that's all I got. There's not a lot coming in right now with free agency news, besides some of the early things. But yeah, appreciate you guys for sure coming on for this pod. This was episode 90. Um, that's pretty much all we got. Should get some news coming in here shortly. Of course, with Paul George, but so far we don't have that. So yeah, Connor, Tyler, Yosef, Ashford, appreciate you guys coming on, and we will see you guys for episode 91. Peace.
Peace.
Thanks for
Yeah.
having us.